He said, when I ride a bicycle, it's me powering it, but it allows me to go faster and farther. So that's what AI is going to do for business and for education. It's still going to be human powering, but it's going to be a machine that we use that allows us to move faster. And it's going to allow equity in speed and access to information. Something that I heard a teacher once say that they hope for their students. It's called failing forward. And that is when you try something new, that's progress forward. And if it doesn't go the way that you want, that's not a failure in the sense of it's stopped you. It's that you learn from what you did wrong to continue to move forward. AI is going to take and be able to replace humans in certain spaces, but it is never going to completely eradicate the need that is part of who we are as people, and that is the human-to-human interaction and connection that is deeply ingrained into our DNA that makes us who we are. AI needs to be thought of in that bicycle metaphor as it is simply a tool to accelerate my work. I want people to realize that it has the ability to accelerate and bring forward the very good work that your people are doing, that your employees are doing. You have fantastic, hardworking individuals across industry who are doing their best to meet the rapidly changing needs. And AI becomes a tool to help them to continue to do that. And so if AI frees you up to be more human, you are using AI appropriately.
Welcome to another episode of The Future of Learning, where we explore how organizations are navigating the tension between technological acceleration and human capability development. I'm Andy Howie, Director of Partnerships at OpenELMS, and today's conversation takes us to a really interesting intersection where educational theory meets corporate reality, where AI ambition meets practical implementation, and where we're forced to ask, are we even using the right tools for modern workplace learning? My guest is Dr. Stephen Henderson, Director of Learning and Development at OpenLoop, which is a company that's been recognized by Time magazine as one to watch, serving over 30,000 healthcare providers and 300,000 patients monthly. But what makes this conversation particularly valuable is Stephen's journey from teacher to professor to administrator and now into corporate L&D, bringing a fresh perspective to an industry that often defaults to conventional wisdom. Stephen's been doing some fascinating work around what he calls just-in-time learning, which we'll hear more about, moving beyond traditional sit-and-learn models to address actual bottlenecks where they occur. But what really intrigued me when researching this conversation was his willingness to ask uncomfortable questions. He's openly questioning whether the traditional LMS concept is even the correct answer for modern, rapidly evolving, complex business problems. That's not just provocative, it's the kind of honest questioning we need more of in this space and things that we've been investigating ourselves. So, at OpenLoop, Stephen's building custom large language models, embedding AI bots into Slack channels, and fundamentally rethinking how learning enablement works at scale. He's also wrestling with the practical reality of implementation, the security concerns, the legal roadblocks, the gap between executive vision and operational reality. So we're going to explore what just-in-time learning actually means when you're addressing real bottlenecks, how AI can function as a bicycle rather than a replacement for human capability, and why Stephen believes we might need skeleton frameworks, customizable foundations, rather than one-size fits all platforms. Stephen, is that fair?
It's fair. Thank you for that introduction.
No problem. Thank you for joining us. All right, so let's get straight into it. So you moved from classroom teaching to higher education to corporate L&D. So what surprised you most about those transitions, and what assumptions from education didn't hold up in the business world?
Yeah. So my professional journey is rather circuitous. I went into education actually believing that I was going to be a high school history teacher, and that's what my licensure was in. My first job was in elementary teaching. So I had to go back to school while teaching full time to be able to legally do what I was doing. Then I transitioned into middle school teaching, where I didn't think that I would ever end up in that. And then post that, after several years of elementary and middle school teaching, I went into higher ed. And I was in higher ed for about 10 years, where I was a professor. Then I became a tenured associate professor. Then I became the associate dean of academic affairs and the chair of a department overseeing all academic programs. And it's from that journey, as I transitioned into business, the thing that I noticed, um, assumptions of education that don't work well in corporate business, especially in a startup tech, is the speed with which we operate. Um,
Mm.
Education, specifically, not necessarily in the United States, in K-12. In K-12, we are able to turn on a dime, meaning, legislation changes and new governor orders or new federal orders come down, and we're forced to pivot all the time. Higher ed does not function that way. We turn at the speed of a tanker in the ocean, right? Um, and in the startup space in corporate America, we are the change is happening so rapidly that the model of how we think about educating, which a lot comes out of, higher ed spaces. I mean, if you scroll Instagram today or Facebook or LinkedIn, you're going to see all these institutions, these academic institutions offering the latest AI training and all these
Mhm,
different things
mhm,
tied to
mhm.
academic understanding. But it's the educational model that they're trying to embed into corporate America that I think is still tied to those principles that are an integral part of higher education, which are I question if that's the right thing to do, if that's the right model now, given the pace with which things operate. So, for example, I just looked at yesterday, I was looking through a bunch of different AI enablement trainings, and it's a 12-week course in da 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 da. It's a 8-week, async class in, executive presence or what, all these different things. And it's like, is that really the model that we need now? Putting somebody through well established course content in a model that marches through content towards this like this formatted course, when you start to dive deep, a lot of these are tied to individual professors or well-established researchers and their work. I even found one that was actually, I went as far to I found a copy of the person's syllabus, and it's like all they did was they're monetizing somebody's units out of a college course. And
Mm.
um I, there are well-established frameworks that we know about learning that need to apply in a corporate setting, such as, one of the highest effect sizes that we know that moves the needle for people's learning is timely, meaningful feedback to people, right? That's well established across, I think, there's a famous text by Hattie. I can't think of the name of the work right now, but 1,600 meta-analyses, 300 million students, 2 decades of research that show us some of the biggest effect sizes of what we know works when it comes to learning and timely, effective feedback. So if we know these well-established principles of what's best practice when it comes to learning,
Mhm.
they're tied to traditional modes or vehicles through which deliver. How do we bridge those two into effective corporate learning when we are operating at a pace that far outpaces anything else in not only in business industry, but I mean, if you'd compare the speed of like higher ed and business and then as tech startups, like higher ed isn't even in the rearview mirror. They're
No.
so behind.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we really have to figure out, what does that mean and what does that look like? So the assumptions, I think, to your original question, that's a very long-winded answer to say there are assumptions about the speed and the vehicle through which we deliver this content that I'm wondering if that is actually the right way that's going to meet the pace and the need of uh, corporations and businesses today.
So it's an interesting perspective. That it's one that's personally resonates with me a little bit from the UK as well. People who listen to this discussion may fervently agree or fervently disagree. and I'm fine with either. But the reason why I'm going to bring it, because it's very pertinent. So I used to develop, let's say in the UK, apprenticeship programs for a number of large scale employers in the UK. So like, I won't mention them on this, but there's a large airports in the UK, large airlines in the UK, large media companies in the UK, right? And so these apprenticeship programs would take people from school who've just finished, give them the opportunity to get a qualification, and then, forward their careers. And what I found when looking at what the universities were doing, when we looked at sort of how we could get sort of connected links to the universities, was that the skills that these guys were learning on the job in these environments far outweighed and outpaced what they would be doing in the higher education sphere, because they were like 3, 4, 5 years behind. And it was quite frightening to me, really, when I looked at it, because these were highly reputable universities that were basically, not saying that they didn't have well-intentioned people running those courses and they had, good ideas around certain ways to deliver these courses, but the knowledge was just out of date. Like, there would be no use to people in the workplace by the time they got there. The practical implementation of what they were learning was just pointless. So it started me on this kind of questioning of, just in response to you there, was in terms of AI, I don't know what higher education can bring to the table right now, really, in the sense of they're kind of hamstrung in the sense of what they're allowed to do. They're hand-tied to a certain extent in terms of the things they can and can't do. Whereas when you go to a private enterprise or a corporate area, not all of them, because some of them are quite protected, but some of them, as we've been having in these discussions, are allowing their people some breathing room into what they can and can't do with AI, so they can then start using these as testing grounds for how do we evolve as a company. Now, some of these companies are getting it right, some of them are getting horribly wrong, and we're not going to find out the results of that for a while. But how does higher education even begin to close that gap? For me, I don't know how they do that.
Sure. That's a great question. That's a fascinating thing that you witnessed firsthand, that so you can take the professor out of the institution, but you can't take it out of me. And so I still subscribe to the Chronicle of Higher Ed, which is the major publication in the United States for higher ed institutions, as well as I subscribe to Harvard Business Review. Fascinatingly, in the last 2 issues, both of HBR and Chronicle of Higher Ed, that what you witnessed is exactly what is being talked about right now, and that is the skills gap that is existing from what they are learning versus what they need to be able to apply in corporate America, in various industries right now, and the seemingly disconnect between practice and educational theory and where they're getting that. And it's pointed out in numerous studies, both across many modes of publication. And I think, and I think because of that loss of connect, and then without seeming too political, at least here in the United States, the institution itself, higher ed, as an entity and as a practice, that is actually becoming and being put in question now, at least here in the United States. The validity of a degree, the validity of an institution that exists like that. And it's an interesting concept, though I fundamentally disagree that that education has no relevance anymore. I strongly disagree with that.
Absolutely.
But I do agree with and think, okay, the things that are being taught, how is it meeting what is the need? In my opinion, and again, this is Stephen Henderson's opinion, not tied to any company,
It's okay, I understand.
If institutions of higher ed want to survive, they are going to need to create business partnerships with organizations, with businesses, implement internships or whatever that looks like, so as to meet the educational need of the academic institution, but to meet the skills gaps that they're seeing that they need in industry, and pick whatever industry you want. I think the apprenticeship model, I believe, is one of the ways that academic institutions are going to survive if they can learn how to tie into that, and then that generates potentially revenue for institutions of higher ed. That, and more importantly, it's giving their students access to and the potential for internships, which could lead to future employment, as well as meeting employment needs at reduced costs for those organizations, as well as them getting and seeing the skills that they need right now. To my point of just in time, right? It's like we have this foundational knowledge that I think is perfectly suited for higher ed to give. There are fundamental skills, fundamental
Yeah.
knowledge bases
Yeah.
that they need. But for example, when it pertains to AI, it's moving so fast that I fail to see how somebody could establish a well established course,
Oh,
maybe rooted in the theory and stuff, but to meet the need
no,
of what they need to be
no.
in industry and see how it's being deployed in whatever
Agreed.
area of focus they're interested in. That
Agreed.
to me seems like the one of the best paths forward for institutions of higher ed to meet the need of businesses, and to get their employees the skills that they need to be able to function in whatever industry they're going into.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I absolutely agree. I mean, like, I don't know how you could run those courses really, just because what you teach in week 4, like by week 8, could have been overtaken by. I mean, who knows? Like, I don't even know how you'd put a curriculum together and legitimately put that out there at the moment. But I mean, yeah. But okay, look, let's come back. Let's go and carry on with the just in time learning. Okay, so just in time learning versus the sort of sit and learn, if you like. So you've described uh, through my research, you're enabling leaders to solve problems more efficiently and timely. Okay, linking back to what you've just been talking about. So through just in time learning. So can you walk us through a specific example where this approach fundamentally changed outcomes compared to what you'd say maybe traditional training?
Mhm. Yeah. We had a program for a while at my current employment where I was coaching individual leaders in their specific areas, and this coaching took the form of you know 2 times a month or monthly meetings for 30 minutes to an hour, and listening to, talking to, hearing about the things that they're working with, what are the biggest issues on their plates right now, and helping them process how do we solve these problems. And I can think of, if you were to take this frequent meeting of, and it speaks to what I said earlier, like this timely, meaningful feedback. So I was listening to this one particular leader in a department, and they recognized that they had no formal training, systems training for incoming new employees in the very, very heavy systems department, that they needed access and familiarity and then mastery of many, many different systems to be able to um, operate efficiently. And I think back to, okay, so we listened, we processed, and then we put a plan forward of how do we solve that, by how do we create the processes like that an individual would need, how do we create the documents, how do we create the walkthroughs and the videos and the tutorials for these people as this department scales. Now, I'm not here to say that I gave a perfect solution, but I think that the beauty behind like coaching or mentoring with I consider myself a fairly seasoned leader now across 15 years of experience. Um, I was listening to, hearing the issues, helping this person identify solutions to implement right now, versus let's say we would have enrolled this individual into um, I'm going to make up a name, strategic thinking for the modern leader, right? An 8-week course in how to solve your biggest challenges, right? Like, okay, um, there's a place for that. There's a place for that foundational understanding of leadership
Yeah.
theory, strategic thinking, and I mean, I'm a product of it, right? In my second master's degree and my doctorate are in those very things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a place for that, but it's that foundational stuff that helped me identify the needs right now that gives those people the solutions to take and implement tomorrow. Says if that's the only mode through which we are giving people these learnings, it's not going to meet the need right away. Um, The other thing too that I think is valuable that uh, could provide that within um, learning, it's something that I'm thinking about that we've not done, or if I even know we're going to roll out. But I'm more and more intrigued by the use of not only human connection as it comes to coaching, but also supplemented by AI agentic coaching,
Uh-huh.
not to substitute the human connection, because of the meta-analyses that I read across time that show that, and this isn't anything that we don't know, but AI and async learning can never replace human to human interaction, whether it be
Absolutely.
here, and even better, Andy, if you and I were sitting across the table with a cup of coffee together in person, it's even better, right? We know that that is fundamentally true. But what if we were to take, again, so traditional modes, me and you talking, if we were in a coaching session, coupled with agentic AI to fill in the gap of some of those basic fundamental, what I would say, foundational skills that we would need,
Uh-huh.
rather than a course, signing them up for an 8-week class or whatever. What if we were to supplement AI, agentic AI that's already been trained on that best practice that this person could go to and say, let's say Andy's my chatbot. Hey, Andy, I'm having a problem with my employee, Steven. He doesn't seem to be very receptive to feedback. How would I solve that? Boom. And it's giving you that answer. And you can take that answer and then go and try to see what it recommends, and then bounce it off of your person to person coach that you can say, hey, I'm wrestling with this. I had some ideas. What do you think? And then you take and you employ it the next day with your person. Again, things that come out of academia, like how to become a coach and that kind of stuff, coupled with agentic AI, so something that's on the forefront of how we're potentially using that. Those two together to give that just-in-time learning of what that employee needs, and then you
Uh-huh.
can train AI agents, coaching bots, or whatever you want to call them, in like tough conversations. Like, what are the two main books? It's like what Crucial Conversations, and then like what is it, Fierce Conversations? Like those are the two most cited books for how to have difficult convos with
Uh-huh.
employees.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
what if you trained a large language model based on best practice that we know across decades of research, coupled with modern business tech problems, coupled with an experienced coach? Think of the learning that that would provide. Let's say you, Andy, as an employee here, if we were to give you that, what a
Oh,
what beautiful thing in learning is to couple
absolutely.
traditional with groundbreaking for just in time to solve the problems that you need.
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously, if you with obviously the beauty of AI, and that's in that particular example, with certainly with agentic AI, is the ability to load in, as you say, specific source material. But then not only that, but what we've been doing, what plenty of other companies are doing, obviously, is then also putting in specific knowledge about your company and how you traditionally respond to these things. So you're getting a proper like sourced material alongside really bespoke to your company stuff, which is an in-house agent. Obviously, then when you're questioning it and you're creating learning from it, it's really niche to what you want, and so your company knows then that it's bang on because it's your bot. And then, as you say, on top of that, when you're getting a face to face, of course, I mean, if we're trying to replace the human element, I'm with you on that. I think you're in a dangerous place as a company where you've replaced humans with AI and you're not looking at any way of kind of balancing it out. I mean, that's not a good place to be. And I think hopefully, I think in time that will be the case, that we will continue to see a, a balance of this approach rather than one way. I think a future without AI now is going to be difficult for any company, but also any company that does it without humans also maybe not in a great place. So it's finding the balance, right? So, so I'm with you on that. I suppose my one thing on that, and tell me how about it. So there's only let's say remind that I need to remind me of how many people, for example, are in your company. Like there's how many employees?
Yeah, so that's a in terms of corporate employees, we're sitting at around between like 3 and 400. We're looking at probably two xing that in the next 12 months. But that
All right.
doesn't so that's like W2 corporate employees. That doesn't include um, like BPO agents overseas. That doesn't include the providers that we contract, so contract employees as well. But that's strictly pure corporate.
Because how many? So, and I suppose this comes down to an L&D budget question, not for you specifically, maybe, but just for people who might think about this as a model. Not all L&D departments are blessed with budgets, really, not huge budgets. But that kind of model that you're talking about in terms of knowledge transfer across the organization, ensuring that people get the right L&D in time for their needs at a specific point, would require, obviously, if you've got, let's say for argument's sake, 400 employees, each of them all get a coach. So you probably, it depends on what the caseload is that's manageable. So you can't have like one coach for 400 people. Do you know what I mean? Like they'd never see them.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, well, how many and this would be the questions, wouldn't it? How many coaches can we realistically afford to run across the organization to ensure that everybody gets, do you know what I mean? It's those are the kind of,
Sure.
the return on investment kind of stuff comes in then, doesn't it? It's like, what will the data tell us? How can we then, maximize that and things like that?
Sure. It's a great question. So what I'm hearing is it's a question of scalability. My answer to that, and this might be a little controversial, but it would be, you need to look at, okay, so there's this great book. It's well established in business. It's about the theory of constraint. It was written by, was it Goldstein? I actually have it right here. So I was rereading it. The Goal by
Okay.
Elihu Goldratt. And it's very well established across industry. It revolutionized how we think about manufacturing. It's called the theory of constraint, right? And you look at your org, and basically it says, where are we seeing our biggest bottlenecks that are slowing down all of our operations? So the question would be, okay, look at an organization would need to do this. This is an internal question that the leaders at various levels would have to look at and see and say, okay, where are we seeing the largest constraints that are slowing our ability down to optimize and output? And, insert whatever industry or org you want. You would then need to go to the leaders who find themselves in those areas where those bottlenecks occur.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I would provide coaching to first, in my opinion. Find the leaders who are possibly at the highest impact areas, and then in conjunction with B, and maybe not necessarily in that order, A or B, right? But find the leaders who find themselves at the epicenter of the organization's biggest bottlenecks, and provide them coaching to figure out how to open up, streamline those bottlenecks, right? That's where I would start. Now, the beauty of agentic AI, if in terms of like coaching or that it becomes very scalable, where if once you created the bot and you wanted to teach an AI coaching agent to let's say not even informal coaching, but let's say it's in the business has an OKR for the year that says we want every employee to try to grow towards one growth goal in by Q3. You could assign a bot to every single person to ping them every Monday morning. Good morning, Stephen. How are you today? How are you? What are you going to do this week to take one step towards completing your goal by Q3? And it sends me a text message, and it's like, crap. Yeah, it's not even on my radar this week. Or on a Friday afternoon, good afternoon, Stephen. I hope you had a great week. I love the Indian proverb of, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So I always tell my people I'm coaching, okay, what you're eating, all of us are eating a different elephant, but every week on Monday, you need to decide on Monday, what am I going to take and bite and chew all week and swallow so that I say I've taken one small bite towards the completion of that elephant. Agentic AI can do that for us. It can say on Friday afternoon, hey, Stephen, what bite did you chew this week? And how are you working? Right? That's scalable. Once you create the thing, it can be deployed to anyone. So it doesn't have to be in this massive, like, how are you solving, Stephen, how are you helping to solve world hunger, right? It can be as simple as like what that person needs for that one goal that they've been identified to. Or so that's how coaching can be scalable from an agentic perspective. But if you're talking about like something like this,
absolutely, it's more on the physical resource.
to me, I would start by identifying bottleneck areas according to theory of constraint, and then identifying what skills do these people need, what skills do your coaches have, or finding somebody to come in and do that, and then helping those leaders process solutions to the immediate problem or whatever constraint it is that they're experiencing. So I think all those things coupled together could help answer that question, and I think could potentially answer the scalability issue, because when you reduce those bottlenecks, then you allow for that growth, and then you could allow for even more people like this to do that individualized coaching type thing with those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before we continue, a quick thank you from our sponsor, OpenELMS Learning Generator. With just a text prompt or document, AI instantly builds a full professional course, complete with video presenters, quizzes, animations, and voiceovers in any language. You can edit everything online and export it as e-learning, a PowerPoint or video. You can even export it as a podcast or video game experience. The best part, you can try it free for 14 days and see how you can use this special agentic AI system to transform your training at openelms.ai. Back to the show.
That's very helpful. Thank you. So when you talk about giving the workforce exactly what they need immediately, right? How do you actually identify what that is? Like, what is your diagnostic process?
Great question. So, I have my own process that I follow that I created. It's my own. It's a blend of what I've learned in practice. It's a blend of, again, my trip. I am, for full disclosure, a classically trained academic, right?
Mhm.
Which I think my experience, coupled with several of my colleagues who are also classically trained academics who now find themselves in business, I think this is a beautiful example of how traditional teachings can be applied in the business sector. And so I fall back on my, I can still hear my professors in, in introduction to qualitative analysis and introduction to quantitative analysis, quant one, quant two, qualitative one, qualitative two, like these 4 classes, right? Using my background in academia and the process through which you seek to answer research questions. I'm a qualitative researcher in training.
Mhm.
I took that theory of practice and played with as I was listening in my coaching things, and I created a process that allows me to it's a series of steps, and it's called Align, and that's what I've named it, and it allows you to listen and assess based on what you're hearing, listen to the high level leaders, interview frontline people in the trenches, Align, thinking of guide towards direction, and then I forget what I had my N stand for. I have a whole process that I do, and it escapes me at the moment. But basically, what it is it's a blend of just-in-time learning, of hearing the issue that leaders have, coupled with my academic training and qualitative analyses, where when you're answering a research question, you need to have 3 data points to triangulate towards what we believe could be the solution to that problem, right? And anytime you're trying to solve a problem, a business problem, you have to listen to it from multiple perspectives. The leaders, the managers, the frontline employees, and even better, add one more perspective, somebody who's seeing that problem from the outside, not internally in that department. We use the, you triangulate into and find, okay, we're identifying this issue, we're listening to these people, and then we're going to propose solutions that meet that exact specific thing. So I have this whole process that I walk through as I do that, and it's really rooted in this idea of just a solution to meet the immediate business problem, a blend of my qualitative background with what I've done in practice and my coaching. That's how I help people identify those problems and then
Mhm.
help them find and propose their own solutions to meet that need.
Okay. So having explained the model and explained how, you try and seek a solution, based on this kind of triangular process and looking at where these things meet and going down the line. Have you used technology, AI, or anything like that to help roll out that solution in a way, in a practical way?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess, one of the most obvious answers, and again, it's rather simplistic, but Chat GPT in all of this
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
analyzing organizational documents, reimagining them to be more user friendly for flow. Um, AI plugin tools in, again, a traditional LMS where we created some trainings for we created trainings for different departments for them to do, and it's it's content that we put together across the business for that department, but then you use the AI bots internally, and what it does is it analyzes your stuff, and it creates those what I would call roadside assessments, like internal, like checkpoints of checking for your standings, kind of thing. AI creates that for us, so we can put together the course and click the button, and then AI analyzes all of our stuff, and then creates course summaries and internal quizzes and all that stuff. That's saving us
Yeah. Hours.
creating assessments. Is a massive time suck for people. So my colleague who her PhD is in curriculum and instruction, and this is her area of expertise. She can create masterful classes for different things, but then she can use AI to create the course assessments based on the content that she plugs in there using her own. So that's saving dozens of hours of time. So AI technologies, we're using it that way. I would say, and again, that's a very simplistic way of doing that, but that's generative AI, right? To create this content, but it's content that we've plugged in. It's generative AI in the sense of we're using, ChatGPT and others to generate documents based on our internal docs to clean up,
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
analyze
Yeah.
against that kind of stuff. Um, something as simple too as meeting bots. Uh, the traditional meeting of, you have somebody who takes minutes, right? Um, we cover so many different things so rapidly in every meeting, whether that be coaching or just business meetings, right? A bot that is listening that can create a summary of, and if you specifically state, like, hey, uh, note in the meeting, Andy has the following action item due by insert date,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
A reminder to Stephen, he needs to submit the weekly report by Thursday, blah, blah, blah. You can talk about all these things and it's going to record all of it. So we're no longer, I like to say it this way. AI meeting bots are a technological tool that allow me to be more human so that it can take care of the stuff that I don't have to remember anymore.
I
Like if,
agree.
if you were having a business meeting right now, Andy, and you're my boss and you're talking about, Steve, you need to do this, this, and this. If I'm sitting here scrambling to write notes to try to remember all the things versus me intently listening, knowing that something else is going to record it for me, I am able to be more human and with the appropriate use of inserting AI into that. Does that make sense? So
100%. I mean, it's something that personally has allowed me to free up so much time for exactly the same thing. I mean, the ability now uh, to get instant transcriptions, to get action summaries, all of that just at the click of a button allows me then to go. I say it to all of our clients. I say it to all of our prospectors. I say it to all the people I chat with now. It's like this is being transcribed. I'm not. It's being transcribed because, as you say, it allows me to be more human. It allows me to be me. It allows me to not think about all of this. It allows me to think off the fly. It allows me to just like come up with creative ideas, all that kind of stuff, and not have to worry about the action plan or the summary or the notes or whatever like that. It's just like I know it'll all be taken care of, and then you move forward with the next phase. It's a no brainer. I mean, it really is. I mean, I don't know how anybody can not.
and all those things are rather simplistic, but at the same time very meaningful because it's bits and pieces, minutes of work here and there that add up to actually massive chunks of time that we
Absolutely.
save to be more productive or to chew on larger problems or to be more human in our interaction rather than taking the time to write up executive summaries of documents that we've already produced, or to put together a report for your supervisor, or to transcribe meetings, or to remember our actions, or to create assessments for that. So that's, at a most basic level, how we're using tech to allow us to be more human, to meet that need of those, like you said, human generated ideas, identifying of the problems, and then using basic tools to help us meet that, to provide that solution, if that
Yeah,
answers your question.
yeah, absolutely. Um, this probably follows through, but you've described AI as a bicycle previously.
Mhm.
Uh, so increasing your speed and capability without replacing human power, which
Mhm.
is probably taps into a little bit what we've just talked about there. It's a very nice metaphor. Is that so? What you've just described there, is that an example of how that plays out when you're
I
building
think so.
internal
Yeah.
AI tools?
Yeah, and I wish for the life of me I could remember. The first time I actually heard that metaphor, it's not mine. I wish I could say that
Okay,
I created
fair
it, but
enough.
I didn't.
Sure.
There was a scholar, he came and spoke at when I was at the university, William Penn University previously, and he came and spoke about, the advent of AI, and he used that metaphor. He said, when I ride a bicycle, it's me powering it, but it allows me to go faster and farther. So that's what AI is going to do for business and for education. It's still going to be human powering, but it's going to be a machine that we use that allows us to move faster, and it's going to allow equity in speed and access to information. Right. So that's I can't remember the individual's name,
That's okay. Thank you there, but I
but
appreciate that.
yeah. But that really stuck with me because it made me think of, we can't let it do the work for us, because it still has to be our thought using that. But it can take some of the low level, I guess, IC work, individual contributor work, that can allow me to maximize my efficiency and my output for speed. Um, and so, yeah, the ability to have tech do all these different things, right? Like, for example, if businesses were to create I previously mentioned this, if a business were to use all of their systems that they operate in, and tie it into their own um, homegrown large language model system to create their own bot, right? Like if I had Henderson Incorporated, right? And in Henderson Incorporated, I use this system and that system for billing and for um, like knowledge management, and I use this LMS to deploy learning and all these. If I would tie that into one internally housed database, and create my own, Stephen GPT, that would tie into every aspect of the business. Think of the knowledge siloing that you could break down silos across org to get people access to immediate information
Yeah,
right now, rather than the CEO needing to wait for the finance report. It could just say, where do we stand on da da da, right? Boom, there it is, right? Eh, Sometimes the largest gap that exists is usually knowledge gaps between like a process or access to information, and you have to wait for either a meeting or a
yeah.
report.
No, yeah, I get it. I mean, it's so. I mean, this is our own internal thing. It's not a product we have. We've done the same. We've done that what you've just described, so that everything's in one place. Everything. It's all you want the sales, you want the funnel, you want the project management, you want your Confluence articles, you want everything. One place. You want a question answered, you ask it, it'll take you there. It's all there, and it's it's scary how transformative that is in terms of because when people, it just stops, as you say, the bottlenecks. There's no there, and it takes away excuses. I think that's what a lot of a lot of people do suffer with it. A lot of companies suffer with this. It's excuse making. Well, actually, if you take away the ability to make excuses, then it's like, okay, why aren't we performing at the highest levels? We really should be. There's no excuses, right? So that's the idea.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to what we're talking about here is the fundamental idea of a single source of truth,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
the streamlining and access to immediate business information to help me solve my problems, right? Therein lies too the beauty of, if you have, let's say, your own GPT or your own chat bot or your own GPT that allows you access information, you're breaking down siloed information, you're speeding up a human's ability to produce because they have access to that information. And then in the side, if you were to plug in within your own, again, we're speaking to agentic AI. If you had your own agentic AI that for Henderson Incorporated, and you could just simply ask the agent and say, hey, I'm going on PTO next week. Where's my form? Boom, here it is. You've saved me the having to call up Andy in HR and say, hey, Andy, I'm going to take PTO next week. Where's the form I got
Yeah,
to
but
fill?
not even that though. Because you could say, like, where's the form? And then look at everything that look at all my tasks over the last 3 months, summarize them succinctly so that I can leave an out of office task list for my manager so that they know exactly where I'm at with everything. I mean, it's just like, because it's all there. You've already done the way. It's just summarizing it all nicely for you to then go, this is where we're at. And so it's just, it's saves hours instantly. So, I mean, that's where we're at now, right? So I mean, it sounds as though, because your CEO, I believe, has said that the age of AI is not coming, it's here. Is that right? Is that your CEO who said, right? That sounds to me like you've got quite a nice position to be in, where you have leadership at the top that are supportive of the idea that we're looking at AI tools proactively, we're looking at solutions in this, and we're going to allow. So a number of the things that we've talked about in the series is the ability in this space right now to fail. Now, I don't mean fail in the sense of, oh, well, that was rubbish, but the actual, because it's such an exploratory time in terms of what's out there, that it's okay for leaders in the organization to try things, to do things, and to fail, and for other people to see that, because it makes them feel as though that they're part of it, and they can also step forward and try things and do things. Is that a culture that's adopted where you are, or is there a different kind of method that you're following?
No, absolutely. That makes me think of two things. One, I don't remember if it's an established quote in education or if it's something that I heard a teacher once say that they hope for their students. It's called failing forward. And that is, when you try something new, that's progress forward. And if it doesn't go the way that you want, that's not a failure in the sense of it's stopped you. It's that you learn from what you did wrong to continue to move forward. Said another way, in a conversation that I had with our CEO, Dr. Lensing once said, he goes, and he's again, a classically trained person from the medical world, right? And he said, I have a scientific mind. And he goes, I like to think about business problems the way that we would using the scientific method. And that is, we see a problem, we ask a question, we propose a solution, and we test it. And if it fails, that's fine. We've learned not how to do it, but then we propose a different solution and we test it. The only way you advance science is through tests that fail, right? And you keep testing and you keep testing till you figure out ways to tweak, and you found the appropriate solution that moves you forward. And that really stuck out to me also as we seek to answer business problems, in that failure isn't a bad thing, in that it stops us or it's stymieing progress, versus the idea of failing forward in the science inquiry, whereas you have to propose solutions that probably won't fail, but there's always learnings from what it is that went wrong and tweaks to continue to move that forward. Right.
Yeah.
So that very much is a culture that we hope to foster, in that we have to be innovative and creative in the startup tech space, or you're never going to make it, right?
Absolutely.
And the only way that you advance is by testing and trying and failing and taking those learnings and small iterative tweaks towards that solution that allows us to move forward.
Absolutely.
That's how I view it. Really the most simplistic way of thinking about it is failing forward, right? Learnings that take that small tweaks or clicks in the right direction. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. You've previously mentioned challenging sort of, we'll look at just looking at the sort of learning management system space and looking at platform orthodoxy and exploring what modern learning infrastructure should look like, right? So I think it's fair to say you have questioned whether the traditional LMS concept is the correct answer, right, for the modern business world, for the modern business problems. So talk to me. What's wrong with some of the things you've used and how it's used, and what's your vision for the future?
That's a great question. I knew you were going to ask it, and I thought about it, and because I do question the traditional orthodoxy of the LMS system as potentially the right mode through which we roll out training. But the question then becomes, if not that, then what?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're still at a point in time where I don't have a solution or an answer to that. For right now, it is, in my opinion, it's not I think we have to think of it in terms of, it's not the only solution that many, I think, people lean into as this is the solution to providing the training at scale, versus is it one tool in a plethora, a toolbox, repertoire of tools in our toolbox of corporate learning that we use. I think when I say I question the traditional orthodoxy of LMS systems, and that is, I think when we see people using it as the only tool to provide that training, that's where I question.
Yeah, I agree.
And my vision is businesses need to have, if we think of learning and development and corporate training as a toolbox, LMS systems are one tool in a repertoire of tools that we have to employ. I think we have to be thinking about agentic AI. I think we have to be thinking about human interaction. I think we have to be thinking about mentorships, partnerships, like what we talked all the way back for college students, and apprenticeships. Why not internally in businesses? Why are we not pairing some of our best people with entry-level people in formal mentorships for like new employees or even seasoned employees who have skills that they need to do? Right there again, you're fostering breaking down of barriers. You're reinforcing human connection. So that's tool 3, coupled with LMS, coupled with agentic AI and chat bots and all those different things. So I think you're going to see it's going to have to be a buffet of options for people, because I think a buffet of options also speaks to not only meeting the various needs within the business, but it also meets the various needs of the learner, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So going and sitting in a traditional brick and mortar institution for continuing education is a fantastic experience. But there are stages in life where that doesn't work for all of us, right? So maybe I do need to take get some learning that's in face-to-face, via Zoom, or maybe my life is such that I can't do that, so I need async learning, right? So because the workforce and the lives of our employees is such that things are not a traditional, where it's very difficult for lots of people to work a traditional, like 8 to 4 now, where you clock in and you're unavailable and until there's still that workforce, but it's becoming increasingly more difficult for people to operate that way. So learnings also have to operate in such that it meets the need of the person consuming that knowledge, right? And if you have a buffet option of these learnings or these solutions to business issues for people, that also meets the needs of those individuals as well. Whether it's for specifically solving a business problem during the workday, or whether it's for continuing education for your workforce, a smorgasbord of options is going to meet the needs of those people, if that makes sense. So, your question, that's a very political way of not answering your question, but dancing around the outside of it, Andy, right?
Well, it's okay. I get it. I do get it, Stephen. It's okay.
And so I don't see traditional learning platforms, these LMS systems going away, because there is a place for them, but they are no longer the epicenter of where that learning and that training needs
No,
to come
I
from.
agree.
They are,
Well, and
they,
that's the way it should be.
Mhm.
That's the way it should be. It just to touch on that briefly as well is um, I think, I mean, any learning management system worth its weight in gold has to have adapt to the times that we live in. Um, and I think what we'll see more of, and I've touched upon this with a few others in terms of discussions, is we're going to be looking more around partnership models around, you know, let's be honest, like the world is changing so fast. Like we could come up with a solution for you today and you could go, that's amazing. That is amazing. We're going to do it now. We're going to implement it now. And in 2 months' time, something else comes along and you're like, whoa, that one's even better. And you're like, but we're now tied into a contract with these guys for 12 months. We can't use this one now. Do you know what I mean? Because the budgets won't allow us just to buy everything. So we're seeing more companies and organizations now adopt more of a partnership approach where it's like, look, we're partnering with not just a learning management system, you're partnering with educational technology companies or around that vibe because you then you're buying into the concept that there are solutions that are continually being evolved, and if you're buying into that, then you're constantly going to get a solution that's constantly evolving. So if it's like, here's what we're doing this, but we're going to evolve on that in the next 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, then you're inputting into the development of what that's going to be for you, right? So it kind of, that's where I can see it probably moving forward towards.
I think
Um,
so, but I think it also needs to be coupled with, you can still have that system, but it needs to be a, what I would say, if you're buying into a contract type thing, it should be a payment by milestone, like a milestone approach to these LMS systems. So that will meet the need of the corporation. So let's say I'm buying into, Henderson LMS, and I need you to provide me trainings on the following. And you establish, like, okay, what is the goal? What are our going to be our benchmarks of assessment that we know? How are we going to know that our people know that information?
mhm, mhm, mhm.
You put them through it, and then you test it, and then you come back to that milestone and say, okay, so I had a contract with Henderson Incorporated. They're providing me this stuff, and these were the goals I set out. Did I reach it? Did my people learn it? If not, you got to change something, or that contract ends there, or you say we did, we keep going. A milestone based approach to contracting and to learning platforms is going to be the way that is going to, they're going to need to either continue to pivot to meet the needs of that business, or the business has an out and they know that I can get here. So now again, we're questioning the very idea of like long-term corporate contracts, because it's not going to meet the immediate just-in-time need that you might have right now.
Exactly. That's why I just don't. I can't see why any organization right now would sign a long-term contract with a solution that's been given to them by anybody. I just don't get it. It's like, why would you do that? Like, as you say, 12 months maybe. Look at and revisit it and look at the, as you say, the master. What were the objectives? What have we reached the outcomes? If we didn't, was it on us? Was it the system? Was it because we didn't get the culture right? Did we not roll it out properly? There's a variety of reasons why certain things don't work. But don't tie yourself into, like, as you said, one size fits all. This is our solution. You then put that onto a company and then go, well, we'll teach you how to use it. And it's like, well, we need it this way. We need to do it this way. And you're like, well, you can't. That's the solution now. You're like, well, I'll sit then for 24 months. It's mind boggling. Anyway, I appreciate this. And we're running out of time. One final question for you, Stephen, I suppose, is I always ask this to everybody, and I'll give you an option to answer it either way. What's the one thing that you want people to remember after having listened to you talk about some of your thoughts today? If you could give one key takeaway that you think would be helpful for people to think about and sort of stew on, what would that be?
I don't think that this is terribly profound, but there's a real fear that you see across publications, whether it's education or work, and that is the human replacement of AI. And AI is going to take and be able to replace humans in certain spaces, but it is never going to completely eradicate the need that is part of who we are as people, and that is the human to human interaction and connection that is deeply ingrained into our DNA that makes us who we are. AI needs to be thought of in that bicycle metaphor as it is simply a tool to accelerate my work. And I want people to realize that it has the ability to accelerate and bring forward the very good work that all of that your people are doing, that your employees are doing. You have fantastic, hardworking individuals across industry who are doing their best to meet the rapidly changing needs. And AI becomes a tool to help them to continue to do that, to enhance their ability to continue to be who we are, and that is people. Human on human interaction and connection. And so if AI frees you up to be more human, you are using AI appropriately.
Perfect way to end. Great soundbite.
Yep.
Stephen, thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.